All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Tanko with the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. We're really excited to have you on our second Young Leaders Dialogue YLD Google Hangout, this time on mental health. So for those of you who haven't heard, we've been having a series of YLDs. Our first one was on education in October, and we're really happy to have two really great speakers today to join us on our mental health YLD. And we also have a couple E3 ambassadors throughout the country. So for those of you who don't know what our E3 Ambassadors program is, E3 stands for Educate, Engage, and Empower. So we selected 33 young leaders across the country to conduct outreach and awareness around 4 issue areas. So mental health, education, pathways to public service, and deferred action for childhood arrivals. So you'll learn more about those 2 issue areas in 2015. But with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers. And I don't think on this YLD I have to emphasize to you all how important it is to talk about mental health issues within the API community, which can often be a taboo subject. So on my right, we have Juliette Bui, who is a public health analyst with SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. On my left, we have DJ Ida, who's the executive director of the National API Mental Health Association, NAPIMA. And we also have 4 E3 ambassadors joining us throughout the country. So first off, we have Crystal Canari, who's live with us in College Park, Maryland. So Crystal, do you want to just wave? All right, Crystal. And next up, we have Sadhvi Batra, who's joining us from Birmingham, Alabama. Sadhvi, great. And next up, we have Aldrin Carrion, who's joining us from Los Angeles, California. Aldrin, do you just want to wave? Awesome. Hey, Aldrin. And finally, we have Franelyn Ruliza, who's joining us all the way from Honolulu, Hawaii. Hi, Franelyn. Great. So those are 4 of our 33 E3 ambassadors. So they have questions for the speakers later on. And before we actually continue, I did want to encourage all of you watching to please tweet us your questions using hashtag E3YLD. Once again, that's hashtag E3YLD. You can also tweet us at White House API, again, at White House API. And you can also email us, whitehouseapi@ed.gov. So that's ed.gov if you have any questions. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our first speaker, Juliette, who will talk about some mental health resources within the federal government. But also, throughout this YLD, we'll help answer the question of, if you all watching right now have friends, family members that are dealing with mental health issues or are considering suicide, what can you do next? What federal and community resources can you leverage? So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Juliette.
Thanks so much, Jason. Hey, everyone. I'm so excited to be on this Google Hangout. First timer. And I wanted to give a special shout out to Crystal, who is also our superstar amazing intern and campus officer for New Hey, Crystal. So I'm going to go to my slides just to chat about some of the resources that you can find from federal government related to mental health.
One sec. There we go.
There it is. So you can actually skip probably to the 3rd slide.
Sorry about that, everyone. Just bear with us. We are just going through some technical issues. They should be okay. So while we're dealing with those technical difficulties, why don't you all continue to tweet us questions. So using hashtag E3YLD. Once again, that's hashtag E3YLD. And you can also tweet us at White House API. Once again, at White House API. So you'll hear from Juliette Bui, who's a public health analyst with SAMHSA, and then also DJ Ida, who's with the National API Mental Health Association, the NAPIMA. So they can help answer any questions that you all may have about those in the community, either your friends, family members who might be feeling suicide or mental health issues. So with that,
Great. Well, I'll just talk while we're waiting for them to come up. You don't need to see my slides anyways. So, the first point I just wanted to make was that, oftentimes with physical health conditions, we're so open and talking to each other about it, like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so awful, I have a cold, or oh, I broke my arm. But oftentimes when it comes to mental health, we don't know where to begin. But the truth is that it's much more common than we think. About half of all Americans will meet criteria for mental illness at some point in their life, so you're definitely not alone in that. So if it gets to the point where you need to seek help, or someone we know does need to seek help, there are several resources that you can turn to from the federal government and SAMHSA. So the first is SAMHSA's Treatment Referral Helpline. This is where you can get some general information about mental health and locate treatment services that are in your area. And you can speak to a person, a live person, Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that number is 1-877-SAMHSA-7. Again, that's 1-877-SAMHSA-7. Now, if you or someone you know is suicidal or in emotional distress, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. It's staffed and trained by crisis workers, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's completely confidential. That number is 1-800-273-TALK. Again, it's 1-800-273-TALK. Great, and I think you see those numbers on the slides up there. All right, then the next slide, some more places to get information. First is our SAMHSA website, samhsa.gov. Along with the treatment referral hotline, we also have an online tool where you can find the health treatment providers in your area. We also have a SAMHSA store, which is sort of a misnomer because everything's free. Go to that SAMHSA store to get brochures and other materials related to behavioral health. And then finally, if you want to just learn more about our programs and campaigns, you can go to that section of our website. Another fantastic website is mentalhealth.gov. There is some wonderful basic information there about mental health conditions, how to talk about mental health, what kind of signs to look for. Another website is okaytotalk.org, and this is a community for teens and young adults that are struggling with mental health problems. And then finally, stopbullying.gov. It has a ton of great resources on bullying, how to prevent it, how to respond, and how to get help. There's an app, there's a Tumblr site, and other interactive material. Turn it over to you, Jay.
Great. I'd also like to say thank you very much for Jason for hosting this. And SAMHSA really is a wonderful resource, so thank you to Julia for all the information she's provided. And I would highly encourage you to become familiar with that. And the time you want to know the information is beforehand and not in the crisis. What I'm going to do is give you some information about what to do in case one of your friends is thinking about suicide or yourself, some of the kinds of things that you look at. I'm not going to go through a lot of data, but we'd be glad to present some of the information to you. Instead, in the time that we have today, I'm going to talk about the warning signs, things that are helpful, and things that you can do in your own community to make it better. So when we're looking at suicide, we talk about who is at risk. Basically, any of us are at risk. Mental health is a part of all of our lives. And although there's this great stigma, there really should be. It's if you're living with you, you're breathing, at some point, each and every one of us is going to find someone that's going to be stressful for our lives. What we're going to be talking about today are what are some of the risk factors and what are some of the warning signs and the things that you need to be able to do. So if you're going to have the first slide. So the first slide is who's at risk and what can we do? Anyone's at risk for suicide ideation. And for many, when we talk about suicide, they don't really want to die, but they just want the pain to go away. They feel like suicide is the only solution. So there'll be quick little tips that I'll talk about somebody, what you might want to say, things that are helpful, things that are not helpful. Somebody's presenting with that problem there. Our task is to let them know they're not alone and help them find somebody who's trained to handle crisis. It's amazing how much just a good listener can do. Being a friend can be an incredible help in helping somebody just even prevent thinking about suicide. So what are the things? The first one is, what are the warning signs? Next slide. So the feelings are feeling hopeless, saying there's no reason to live, the world would be better off without me, I just can't stay the way out. These are some of the things that people might say if they're thinking about suicide. Persons can be making threats to try to kill themselves. Person may be looking for guns, pills, or other means. So these are some of the warning signs that people are looking at. They should really want to take seriously. Eating recklessly and not seeming to care about what the consequences are. Increased use of alcohol or drugs. Social isolation, withdrawing from friends and family. You can see dramatic mood swings. Somebody who's very quiet and somebody becomes very, very overly talkative. Somebody who's been talking becomes very, very quiet. You can see this major mood swings. Giving away prized possessions and things that matter. So the first thing you want to do is understand what the warning signs are, but also go through. Somebody maybe has some of this, and it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be suicidal. So what we want to do is, again, just give you sort of a basic, and in order to be comfortable, it's going to go a lot more than just today's. But this kind of lays the foundation for the things you want to be looking at. A person may feel the next slide. Let's say they say that I can't see pain, I can't think clearly, I can't make decisions, I can't see any way out, I can't sleep or eat or work, I can't get out of this depression, I just don't think the sadness go away. Things just don't seem to be getting any better. I can't see myself as being worthwhile. I can't control. So those are the kinds of things I want to look at. If you hear these things, or if you hear these things, what can you do to help? One of the first things to recognize is that things can happen. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not crazy. These are just issues that come with anything that can happen. It could be a break in a relationship, it could be trauma. Everybody is different. We all have it different. To the next slide. First thing you want to do is know what are the warning signs. You want to be supportive and you want to make it safe for the person. One of the greatest things is welcome to we all feel judged. None of us want to feel down. There's something wrong with you. You've done something really stupid. You want to be there. You want to listen. Don't be afraid to ask if your thoughts are putting themselves. So if anybody is making those signs about, should I be dead, I could just die. It's a very hard thing, but it's okay to be nervous. Don't feel like you've got to be the expert. But it's amazing what you say. Listen, I just want to know how you feel. It's letting the secret out to that person from you. You want to begin with plans. And again, these are all written down, and we'd be glad to be able to give you more information. But the things you don't want to do, you don't want to debate if it's right or wrong. This is not the time to let you be thinking about it. Don't do this. Sometimes friends will say, I'm going to tell you something. This is a secret you don't want to keep. And the next time we'll talk about how to address that. You want to offer hope, but don't minimize it. In other words, it's not that big of a deal. Because you just let them know that your thing is not important. So you give them hope, but you recognize it. Don't be afraid to promote your story. It's a scary thing. It's not. So there's nothing wrong with you. This makes me a little bit nervous. Don't feel like you can have the answers. Nobody does. But you can be a tremendous help by just being a support. The person is suicidal. One of the things you don't ever leave them alone while you're getting support. So one of the things, and that's starting off with the resource that Julie was talking about, really, really important. These are the things you can do in advance. Know where to go. Know where the resources are. So if somebody does just say, you've got the resource hanging. You don't want to be freaking out and trying to put the real pages. It's a very simple thing to do. Know who's available. And know how to make a referral to somebody who's really trained. Next slide. I'm going to do this very, very quickly, so I want to make sure we get time for Q&A sessions there, but very quickly. A very natural reaction is to say to somebody, it's not that bad. It's actually not a helpful thing to say because the message you're giving them is, it's really not that bad. What's wrong with you? Why do you make such a big deal? For us, it's the wish that it would. So take a very simple thing and say to them is, I wish it weren't that bad. I don't have all the answers, but I'm here to support you. You acknowledge their pain, but you let them know that it is doing good. You don't say, oh my God, you did what? Don't be shocked. That can really push them off and go, oh my God, I'm freaking you out. I didn't really need it. And they end up taking care of you. So instead you might say something like, I'm sorry it hurt so much, but things can get better. I'm not sure how, but I'm here to help you. You're not alone. You don't play one up much. Well, I know somebody who did this. Who focuses on it? The last one's a secret. I promise I won't tell anybody. What you might want to say instead of, I respect your privacy, because it's your own secret, I care for you, and I want to make sure you're safe. So I'd like you to find somebody to talk to who is the proper truth. These are some very simple little other things, but those are the basic two kinds of things of how to respond to that. See, on that one, and then I think Julie went through some of the resources. The next slide. Juliet went through all the, so these are just sort of a listing, and Juliet will get information. So the slides are available for you, but I'm not going to read through those. And then the last one I'm going to do is a resource that the PIMA is doing, and that's a Friends to Make a Difference campaign. It's the last one that we're working with the communities to work specifically with Asian American family communities. We're talking about how you raise awareness and make it safe to talk about mental health issues. And we were very thrilled that at our summit last year that Jason was a keynote speaker. And so, again, I think as we all work together in partnership, this is an issue that affects all of the communities, and these are ways that we can work together. So with that.
Thank you so much, DJ. Thank you, Juliet. I learned a lot from your presentation. So if I could actually help recap, and correct me if I'm wrong, with a couple of the resources both of you highlighted. So on the federal end, we have SAMHSA, again, that's Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So they have, and Juliet provided the number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is definitely a resource if you know someone who is thinking about committing suicide. You can also visit mentalhealth.gov, and I know that there have been various videos, testimonials, and other resources on mentalhealth.gov available for you all. There's also stopbullying.gov, and as Juliet mentioned earlier, there's the SAMHSA store, which has free materials that you all can read about in terms of publications, statistics, other things available. On the community end, so NAPIMA has the Friends Do Make a Difference campaign, which talks a little bit more about the signs that you look out for with friends who might be considering suicide or dealing with mental health issues, asking them if they're going to hurt themselves while not minimizing what you're doing. So that's just an overview recap. Thank you all again, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to a couple questions on Twitter. So we have been receiving a bunch of questions, so thank you all. Continue to tweet those questions, hashtag E3YLD. So I'm actually going to start with Ben Fang93. So he asked, how can we approach friends dealing with mental health issues who might not want to talk? That's often definitely something that comes up. So again, the question is, how can we approach friends dealing with mental health issues who don't want to talk about it? Great question, Ben.
I think one of the things, and first of all, thank you for just being concerned, because it is such a taboo. One of the things you want to be able to do is want to sort of normalize it. And so instead of assuming that they're going through and saying, oh, I have got a problem, you want to come to them where you're thinking, it's like, I've been noticing that you seem to be really down. I'm just kind of concerned. I want to check and see how you're doing. So you want to open the door. You let them know that they're not alone. There's a reason why you're feeling that you're not making it. It's like you haven't been sleeping very well. I know you seem to be really kind of agitated. They're giving you the signs, but you're not telling them what to feel, how to feel. The main thing is just to let them know it's okay. So if you take the initiative, sometimes that can be the best thing because then they don't have to feel like, oh, I'm going to make yourself available. And that can go really well.
Thank you, Ben, for your question. The next question is from Andrew. What kind of outreach efforts are there to spread awareness of federal resources? So have there been any outreach efforts, again, to spread awareness about the federal resources that are available?
Absolutely. Well, we're always really excited to participate in events such as this one to reach different groups. So we're really glad that we reach young people for these efforts. I'm not sure. I didn't know about SAMHSA even when I was going to grad school. Don't tell anybody. But we are participating in things like this. We're using more social media. So SAMHSA has a Facebook account. We're using Twitter just to get the word out about our resources and activities. And also relying a lot on our partners. So DJ comes from one of our really, really great partners, NAPIMA. And it's kind of a two-way discussion with us. it's hearing from our community partners on what the needs are of the community, and then also saying, well, here's what we can offer, and what more can we offer the community from what you're hearing.
Just like I want to add to that, I think it's really important to know that you do have federal partners. A lot of the programs that NAPIMA and other organizations have worked on really came from resources from SAMHSA, so they are a great resource. And don't think just because they're in Washington, D.C. or at the federal level that you don't have access. It's really not true. And I think if you take advantage of the materials that are there, you'll find that it really is a true good resource. And again, a lot of our materials come directly from initiatives that SAMHSA did start.
And if I may add, I've been overseeing youth outreach for the initiative for 2.5 years now. I can definitely say that, at youth workshops, conferences, definitely inviting NAPIMA, to consider hosting a workshop at your youth conferences, or even just letting us know at the initiative if you need a speaker from SAMHSA, from the federal government to attend one of your events, or we have our E3 ambassadors, again, 33 young leaders throughout the country who can help us spread awareness about these issues. If you'd like our help in identifying those speakers, please do email us, whitehouseaapi@ed.gov. Once again, that's whitehouseaapi@ed.gov, and I'd be happy to connect you all to NAPIMA and SAMHSA. So with that, I'd actually like to ask another question. So KX Low asked, what influenced both of you to pursue careers? So again, what influenced both of you to pursue careers in mental health?
Okay, sorry. It's a good question because mental health isn't something that Asian American, Native and Pacific Islanders tend to gravitate towards. But when I was an undergrad student, when we were doing a lot of student organizing, it was very, very clear that people were saying, even then, many, many, many years ago, oh, Asians have all got it made. And those of us from the community knew that even though many of our friends and our colleagues were doing well, there was a lot of issues there. And in sort of the blind leading each other, realized that we really did need to get training, we really did become a lot more familiar with the issues. So it's, I think, just being from the community and wanting to consider and feel like it maybe in some small way that I might be able to change things. So I think it's really just thinking
Yeah, for me, it really did stem from a lifetime of personal and seeing loved ones go through challenges with both mental health and substance use issues, and really feel at a loss and definitely know much about what's going on and sort of in this black hole that's been created around understanding mental health. So I'm thankful that we have these things supporting these efforts to really pick away. I've always been a big fan of the underdog, which is why I've been able to be a DC sports fan for so long. But I also feel like mental health is like the underdog of health. We're always fighting for people to understand that it's a very critical component of our something that should be not taken seriously or sort of marginalized. It's only some people that deal with it. So that's what
just like a little comment quick on that last comment that Juliet made. I think it's a really important thing for anybody that might be interested in working in mental health. Mental health really permeates everything that we do, but yet it does end up being sort of the orphan child of the health arena. And yet it has probably the strongest indicator of how well we do. And because there's going to have problems, end up the treatment that we need, and can end up really experience and care. So if we just sort of move it out of the way of some minor things, it's critical. And a lot of what we do with our overall health is improved tremendously. But just pay attention to that.
And if I could actually, just share too, I myself don't have a career in mental health, but I've definitely had friends who've dealt with mental health issues. I've lost loved ones, unfortunately, to suicide. So I know what it's like to be there, having lost loved ones to suicide, having had friends who have had mental health issues, and just thinking about those moments really reminds me of why it's so important. And, I look back and oftentimes I do wonder what if, but I know that I can't go back in time and change what happened in the past. But what I do know is that I can use these resources in the community and the federal government to hopefully ensure that, not another person in our community has to suffer or take their lives. So I really do encourage you all to, again, share all of the resources that you're learning today with your friends, family members, to really prevent suicide, to be able to address mental health issues in our community. So another question from Twitter is from David J. Toledo. So how do we come to terms with seeking mental health resources, especially if it's so taboo in our cultures? So again, how do we come to terms with being able to seek mental health resources? It's so taboo.
That's the $200 million question. It really starts with, I think, redefining and assessing what mental health is. And that we take the taboo away by taking away if there's something wrong with you. We begin to normalize it, that as human beings, we all have emotions. And it's totally normal. If somebody's been through a crisis, it's really difficult. A normal reaction is to feel pain. What is abnormal is to not have emotion. We begin to realize that the real tragedy, and just sort of back up on the book you said, the real tragedy when you don't do something about it. When you realize that you're actually doing something that takes strength and takes courage, we reframe it and say, I'm doing something to make my life. I'm doing something to really care for my friends and care for my family. Within that context, then it's not a bad thing. It's a really positive thing. And we realize that we actually it's a very serious change. So with that mindset, it's okay. If I could tell people it's not a bad
thing. Making it not as taboo to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have said it better than DJ, but I guess, just something for our community to think about is what are the reasons behind why mental health is a taboo subject? Understanding more about what those social weeks might be, or if there's areas of opportunity where we would be able to raise awareness and starting with things that you guys are doing with the younger generations. Certainly an important step forward.
I agree. And if there are ways too within your campuses, communities to say, hey, it's okay to seek mental health services. I will admit myself, I've been through therapy, and honestly, for a lot of people, saying that out loud, you might think, oh, what about issues, problems? No. I think anyone, should think of mental health as health. The same way in which you visit your doctor should be treated and seen in the same way as seeing a therapist or a psychiatrist. So I think the more in which you speak out about it is a way of normalizing it and making it seem less taboo. You share those kind of stories. So with that, I'd like to turn it over now to our E3 ambassadors. So why don't we go to Crystal Finari, and she, I know, has a watch party in College Park, Maryland. So Crystal, one of our E3 ambassadors.
All right, hi everyone. Hopefully there's not a lot of lag, but I just want to say thank you for allowing us to have speak on here. My question is, if you can hear me, what are your organizations doing to better understand the needs of Asian Americans in the absence of disaggregated data?
Of API populations in the absence of disaggregated data.
You want to say with disaggregated data? This is this is a whole nother talk.
Yeah, I'll just take a quick stab at it. Actually, I'll go to slide 7. Just to give some background on this whole question about disaggregated data and why this is such a huge issue, not only for mental health, but I think for our population in general, understanding different policy issues. So while that's coming up, so the question Crystal is raising is that a lot of times when you see federal data, you'll see a chart where it'll lump together the APIs. And this has historically been the case just for a couple of reasons. One is that the surveys will just ask about broader categories. So either you mark Asian or other or Pacific Islander in some cases, and so they don't know which ethnic group you're from. And in many cases too, there are very small numbers in these survey samples. So once you do the data analysis, you don't come up with statistically significant numbers that can come up in our data. But that's certainly not an excuse for us to move forward and to work harder to learn more about our community within them, because we know that there are differences across these subgroups. So how Chinese individuals might experience something in mental health versus Filipinos versus Vietnamese versus Native clients may be quite different. Is that coming up? So I just wanted to say too that you've probably heard about the Affordable Care Act in terms of getting health insurance, but the ACA also has a really important provision related to data, and that's Section 4302. And this is taking a big step forward in allowing them to know more about the ethnic groups by collecting data across more granular categories. So like I mentioned, some surveys might just ask Asian, white, African American. Well, Section 4302 is now requiring federal surveys to ask more specifically which ethnic groups. And I think if you see this slide, you can see the groups that are now being required to be included in federal surveys. So in the future, hopefully we'll see more charts where you won't see AAPI clumped together, but different ethnic groups and learning more about the differences between those subgroups.
And very, very quickly, I think Julia did a really good overview. What NAPIMA and other organizations do is, when we don't have the data, that doesn't stop you from saying there are needs. We know there are needs there, but we keep pushing at both ends, disaggregate the data, but at the same time saying that even when we're lacking specific data, we know there's problems that are out there, and we have to keep pushing forward to ensure that we get the resources for our community and recognizing diversity.
I absolutely agree. And one of the things that the White House Initiative is also working on is a portal on data.gov, data.gov/AAPI, which centralizes a lot of the AAPI-specific data within the federal government. So we encourage you all to visit data.gov/AAPI to learn more. So next up, thank you, Crystal, for your question. Next up, wanted to turn it over to Sadhvi Batra, who is live from Birmingham, Alabama. So,
hey everyone, this is my watch party.
Hi.
So we wanted to ask, under the Affordable Care Act, what mental health services are currently provided?
The Affordable Care Act, it doesn't say specifically which services. What it does is a number of things, and Julie will also will both respond to this particular question there. What it does is it says that mental health services are, you must provide mental health services. It's one of the 10 essential benefits. And so what we've done, and this is really, really important, because with the expansion of Medicaid and the eligibility of Medicaid, that's one of the greatest providers of mental health services. So for a lot of our populations that were able to afford mental health services, there are provisions in there that are just mental health and have a great impact. One of them had to do with the removing the exclusion on pre-existing conditions, because mental health is considered a pre-existing condition. So by removing that particular bar for receiving services, it opened up individuals so you can see the kinds of care that we couldn't have before. And then the other piece is around prevention. Prevention is huge. And so through the prevention dollars, you can hopefully prevent the crisis at the other end of it. They're putting money up front. Those are ways that we can improve the overall mental health individuals in our country.
Sure, I have a slide which may or may not come up. So I'll just say, so in addition to the things they said, I think DJ may have mentioned that they can't, plans now can't deny you coverage based on pre-existing conditions, including mental health conditions. If young adults can be covered under their parents' plan up until age 26, so you don't have to worry about getting your own insurance. Also, there's something called parity protection, and this actually was enacted into law in 2008, but the ACA has put some more teeth on it And what this means is that for plans that include mental health and substance use benefits, the coverage can't be more restrictive than what they have for medical and surgical services. Also, in terms of Medicaid, all state Medicaid programs provide some mental health services, and Medicare also has a wide range of mental health services. So if you're talking to someone who qualifies for Medicare, I will say there's great variation across plans and from state to state in terms of what mental health benefits are going to be included, which is why we're kind of taking this broad picture approach in terms of how the ACA impacts. But if you're shopping for insurance, it's very important that you check the summary of benefits and look at what the mental health benefits are within that plan and see if it fits your needs.
Great, thank you both. So just a friendly reminder, don't forget to sign up on healthcare.gov if you haven't already. We're in the process of enrolling folks in the second enrollment period, so we do encourage you, as you're doing that too, to check and see what mental health services are either covered or provided under your various health insurance. So again, healthcare.gov. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to Twitter. We've been receiving a ton of questions on Twitter, so keep tweeting us your questions, hashtag E3YLD. So our next question comes from Niche, I believe that's Chelin. What has been most challenging in efforts in bringing mental health issues to light in API culture? So again, have there been any barriers or challenges in our efforts to bring forward mental health issues within API? Have you experienced any?
Unfortunately, this is, I think, something we see all the time. One of the biggest barriers when we're to talk about is just the taboo of learning. But there's also, just from a cultural standpoint, oftentimes providers of this really don't understand about the really diverse and distinct cultural and language differences found among Asian American Native Islanders. And a one-size-fits-all just isn't going to do it for work. So part of defining what's the problem, how do you know it's a problem, and what are going to be success stories, and how do we get to define what it's going to be all about. The other piece is, even if we get past the barriers, or if we get past the taboos and everything, we are so underfunded and underrepresented in terms of really quality services, the violent providers that we do understand that are. And then as we move towards integrated care, which is a huge piece of the Affordable Care Act, it's how we blend mental health, substance use, and physical health, so that we don't split the mind, the body, and spirit, and really create a whole issue. So there's a lot of issues that are out there. What we also, there's so many beginning to make some headway. The fact that we're going to have this type of an event this evening and other issues, we're really going to realize I think for a lot of you, in the comments, like being aware of the issues and writing them. Because our challenge is a great question.
I agree. And I really feel like, the first step right now is really, part of our E3 Ambassadors program. Educate, engage, and empower. So I think, you all are taking part in the educate part. So learning about the community federal resources that are available to be able to address those barriers and challenges. And I think really the next step is engaging your campuses and communities around these things that you've been having in-person discussions, inviting folks like the Pima SAMHSA, your college counselors, to share what specific local resources are available in order to address some of those challenges. Which takes me to the next question on Twitter from Saba, Saba314. How can we work with universities, especially those involved with the administration at universities, to be able to spread awareness about API issues? So again, how can we get universities, especially getting the backing of your administrations, to be able to help spread awareness of API? Any thoughts on that? Working with universities and administrators?
This is actually right into the Friends Make a Difference campaign. That's actually one of the things we're working on right now. One is, as AHPI students, we pay student fees. So the universities have a responsibility back to our students, just like everybody else. And they really need to realize that this is an issue. They need to make it a community-friendly place that really understands and respects diversity. And so one of the things, and again, you've got Sansa, got Pilapi, Nakima, all of us would love to work with you to be able to say, what are the kinds of resources that we can bring to the table? So you don't have to do it by yourself. We can sort of share ideas, but these are the kinds of things that's really engaging the communities. And that really is actually the focus of the Friends to Make a Difference campaign. It really is working with administrators and saying that if we were to bring an awareness program to your campus, what are you doing? What is your responsibility? How are you going to help the students? Because we can pop in and do stuff that we really need. It's really the university, it's your campuses that they really need to say, yeah, we understand what's going on with students here, and we really need to make this a place that it's safe for them to come. Yeah, what the comment?
Yeah, and I would just I would just add that in addition to sort of it being your right to get mental health services, I think universities and administrations in particular have a vested interest in seeing successful students, and positive mental health is one of those things that support in terms of having good being able to pursue your educational goals and to graduate successfully.
I think that's a really good point of how we make it a safe place and diverse. Because at its heart, you're giving the message they want to be successful. They want their students, all their students, including the guys, to do well. I think that's what it's kind of awful. That's what it's kind of, it makes the university look fun.
Also using your student government as a resource, so they're also a key voice in working with administrators and other officials. Even if it's professors, faculty, your local or university Asian American Study Centers, to really be able to utilize them to uplift these type of issues.
It's kind of champion. Somebody you can trust that's going to be there, and you may not be Asian, but it's a champion that will work with you to really get these things.
All right, so I'd like to now turn it to Aldrin Carry-On, who's our E3 ambassador in Los Angeles, California, and then Aldrin has a question.
Hi. Whoa. Okay.
Something happened.
Oh. Okay.
Here we go.
We're watching in LA.
Hi. Hi.
And my question is SAMHSA working with issues of childhood bullying and how it affects mental health in adulthood in the API community?
Could you repeat that one more time, Aldrin?
My question is SAMHSA working with issues of childhood bullying and how it affects mental health in adulthood in the API community?
The answer is yes. So we are a key member of the Federal Partners in Bullying Prevention, which is a collaborative effort among 26 offices within 8 federal agencies, and this includes the Department of Education, Department of Justice, other offices within HHS, to coordinate federal efforts around bullying prevention. And SAMHSA is also part of this new WIAPI task force on bullying prevention that focuses specifically on the API population. I will say, since you asked about the effects of bullying on adults into adulthood, that there are a number of impacts, not only for the kids who are bullied, but the kids who do the bullying, and then also the bystanders. And these can range from risks for mental health issues like depression and anxiety, and then on into their relationships in adulthood. So increased partner violence, possibly, and increased use of tobacco and alcohol.
And if you'd like to learn more, again, as Juliet mentioned, we just recently actually launched an AAPI task force on bullying prevention, which again SAMHSA is a member. So if you all have any thoughts or things that you all want us to work on, including bullying, and as you mentioned, Aldrin, the question about childhood bullying and how it affects mental health in adulthood, those are some of the things that you all are interested in the task force that we're working on. Definitely let us know. You can email us, whitehouseaapi@ed.gov. So thank you, Aldrin, for your question. And finally, our fourth E3 ambassador, Franelyn Louisa, who joins us from Honolulu, Hawaii.
Okay, well, everybody is like.
Madeline, do you have a question for us?
Yes, I do. So my question is, I think we've already discussed this, but what is the best method or tips that you would recommend to young leaders like us to be able to initiate dialogue with their communities on mental health?
Exactly. One is the more aware you are of what mental health is and is not. If you're looking for a perspective of knowledge, that's really, really important. So we aren't going off of sort of myths or anything. It's just having kind of awareness. But the other thing is just having the commitment and the desire, and to know that it's an ongoing growing process. But being willing to get out and get to the community. And another thing that really helps me work with communities is that it's important to understand, quote unquote, about the diagnosis and everything. But if we begin to broaden it, realize that mental health is a part of all of our lives. The ways that in the community we can do it that gets around the stigma issue, it's just about healthy communities, making it a safe place for kids to play, being able to do it and talk about identity issues, being able to go out and do all these other things that will be very therapeutic in perspective without having to put a diagnosis on it. But it's pretty healthy. It can be involved in an issue. It could be mentoring. These are all different ways that you can shift the way that we look at the issues. And then once you become engaged, then it becomes also easier to talk about some of the difficult issues because you develop the trust and you know that you're going to be there and follow through. Those are some of the keys: to be engaged, be familiar with it, be willing to sort of stay with it, and develop trust.
Yeah, and just to emphasize what DJ was saying, to just start with educating yourself, becoming more aware about what mental health is, and also in particular for our community, what mental health isn't. I think from youth culture, we're very superstitious, and so a lot of those superstitious beliefs play into what we think about health. Sometimes it's a little bit funny, but when I talk to my family about it, but in the end, it affects how we think about health and whether or not we're going to seek help for our health issues. So I think starting there is really important. Please take advantage of all the resources that DJ and I have shared today, and if you have questions on any of them, reach out to us. So mentalhealth.gov in particular has a toolkit for beginning community conversations on mental health. So it's designed to be a resource for those who want to hold an event around discussing mental health. And I think for the ambassadors and young people, you know how to adapt that to your context and what young people are most responsive to. DJ mentioned this before, but know where to direct people more information. You don't have to be the expert on it. You begin the dialogue, begin the discussion, and then know some resources on where you can put together.
Something like the end of that, SAMHSA took the lead nationally in talking about the recovery movement within Asian Americans, and this was in coming up with sort of the controversy in recovery. This really came out of the consumer movement, really understanding it. One of the taboos is we feel like if you have a serious mental health problem, it's a one-way street. It's basically, that's it, you'll never get any better. And recovery really sees that it's different for everybody. But people get better, I don't care how serious the problems are. People with very serious mental problems can do much, much better. And when you understand that, that's the first thing you report to somebody. As bad as it seems now, it's really kind of. So again, going back to the SAMHSA, look under recovery, I think the SAMHSA.gov, look under recovery, and it has all the different issues and different ways that you're talking about. The recovery really works that. Because that's another way to educate yourself so that we realize that mental health is no longer this sort of, it's like the good sense. You get a diagnosis and that's the end of the world. Because it really is.
Thank you. And I agree with what Juliet said earlier. Definitely invite the experts to your campuses and communities. I'm not an expert. That's why I invited these two to speak on our YLD. So there's, I'm sure, experts within your campuses and communities that you can go to and have a dialogue. I'm sure you all have a ton more questions that within an hour we aren't able to answer. So we really do encourage you all as a tip or recommendation to really to continue to have these discussions within your campuses, and also bring your friends, bring your family in order to highlight the resources available. The E3 Ambassadors Program also created a toolkit. So if you all go to bit.ly/WIAPI-E3, all in capital letters, WIAPI-E3. The one that, once again, that's bit.ly/WHIAAPI or E3. We offer E3. You can visit all of our resources, including our toolkits on mental health. So within the toolkit on mental health, which actually Julia helped us put together, there's background on mental health within the API community. There's outreach ideas, and then also centralizes the resources. A lot of the resources that we talked about today around mental health within SAMHSA, suicide prevention hotline, and also materials within the Affordable Care Act that you all can leverage in order to help deal with mental health. So we have about 10 minutes left, so I did want to continue the dialogue on Twitter. So one of the questions actually is from Emily W. Speaks. What else is Makima working on? So we have the Friends Do Make a Difference campaign and the other initiatives that you all are working on.
There are actually a couple of things that, one is our wellness campaign, and what is it? It's training community members. We don't have enough folks that are getting their PhDs, their MDs, and there's nothing that guarantees you the culturally competent. So, and this is something that we would love to work with some of the young leaders around how you learn how to make healthy decisions within your communities. And in fact, one of our hopes is to eventually be able to to the college campuses to train to be wellness coaches. We train interpreters because language access is a huge piece, and if you don't have someone who speaks the language, then it's really important to train interpreters that are professionally trained, don't just grab a kid or the secretary not to speak the language, etc. We are going to be actually getting the word. It's a little premature, but you're going to be getting some news out fairly quickly about an art contest that we're going to be doing, which is really going to be taking our Friends to Make a Difference campaign, and we're really, really inviting all of you to participate in this because it's really looking at how do you get engaged, and that if selected, we will use your artwork in Intertrend, which is our marketing company. We'll make it into a poster, and we're doing this as part of the community. So we invite you to become involved in the Friends campaign. If you're an artist, let us know. Jericho is our project director, who will give you more information. So let's just sort of put these little things on.
Next question is from Nico. D helping us one. Can non-citizens take advantage of their mental health resources? So if you're undocumented, if you are a non-citizen, are you still able to take advantage of these resources?
This is a really, really touchy question. I know that many of the agencies will not ask the question. And years ago, when they were requiring in order to get credibility, you must ask that. They're saying, we're not here to ask for legal status. We're here to provide services. I think it puts undocumented individuals at a real risk. But what I think people need to realize is that a lot of the agencies are saying, if you're part of the community, we want to provide services and help for you. The other thing which unfortunately, so immigration reform is a key piece, and hopefully we'll take an active role in making sure that we get fair and equitable immigration laws here. Because even people who are here illegally are denied benefits from family. So these are the kinds of things that we can't go into all the detail in this, but I thank you very much for asking that question. And I think what we'll do is we encourage you to become involved in the community, become familiar with what immigration laws are, what's being proposed, and what you can do on your college campus with your own communities. Because immigration health is a right, it's not a privilege. And so that's something which we would like to make a better people should not be afraid of. And we should keep citizenship that services they deserve.
Yes, and I do encourage you again to visit the mental health services within your campuses and communities. With community-based organizations, often they don't ask for citizenship status or background. Same thing goes with campuses and communities. But again, every service is different, so we do really encourage you to help research the resources available and to spread awareness to your family and friends about those questions. So next up, I'd like to ask, so Ben Fang, 93, another one of our E3 ambassadors. So how can we combat the model minority myth, which basically says that our communities don't really need federal government resources, that we're doing fine, that we're healthy, we're smart, we go to Harvard, we're perfect, don't worry about us. So how do we, and which obviously is a myth, so how do we combat the model minority myth?
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah.
It too bad that this continues to persist because, quite frankly, beyond anecdotal evidence, there's a lot of data that supports the fact that there are needs within the AAPI community.
This is why the disaggregated data becomes really important. If you add all this together, you look fine. But when you begin to break the data down and you begin to look at the different populations, and even when you look at social economic status, you're looking at grades, etc., somebody can look like they're doing really well, and they may be going to Harvard, they may be going to Stanford, they may be going to school. That doesn't mean that they're mean. Because sometimes the pressures to be the perfect person, to be the model, that in of itself is a key factor in somebody going, I can't get help because what will my parents say, what my friends say, I have failed, I have to be perfect. And I think outsiders don't realize the tremendous pressure we place on the communities with expectations we have to be. So it's a real double-edged sword. One is disaggregated data. It's a good question. It's a really good question.
It's a great question. And from our perspective at the initiative, we deal with the model minority myth all the time, and the way in which we combat that is really through the facts, by telling the story, by breaking down the data, by highlighting, in our mental health toolkit, it highlights a lot of those facts. The fact that Chinese American women have a higher suicide rate, 10 times higher than that of white women. So that clearly sort of highlights the need for us to provide culturally competent mental health services to all APEC. And again, who can take part in that is by looking through the toolkit, looking through the website, looking through the reports, and helping us be able to uplift those statistics within your campus. So that's a really, really good question. So it looks like we are running out of time. So our last and final question is, in 30 seconds or less. So again, our E3 ambassadors are charged with educating, engaging, and empowering their communities. So my final question for you in 30 seconds is, what can young leaders do to educate, engage, and empower their communities around?
I think first of all is things like this, just becoming aware of it, and then making a commitment to knowing that if you do something, you really can make a difference. So we just really encourage you.
Yeah, a lot of the topics that we cover can be rather challenging, but I think if you come at it from the perspective of it being part of your health, so just like you brush your teeth, you try to eat healthy, you do CrossFit, why do we not think about maintaining good mental health in the same ways? And so starting the discussion with your friends, with yourself, with your family, on how you maintain good positive health is one way to open up the conversation and also promote good positive mental health.
Perfect ending. So with that, I would like to thank you all so much for joining us on our second Young Leaders Dialogue Google Hangout. That hour went.
It did. Thank you guys for being there.
Really fast. Hopefully it did for you all too, but I've learned a ton. So I'd like to thank DJ, again with Nakima, Juliet from SAMHSA. I'd like to thank our 4 E3 ambassadors. So we have Crystal, Sadvi, Aldrin, Franelin. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you. Thank the rest of you E3 ambassadors and everyone else for attending, hosting watch parties. You can't see them right now, but Isha and Bessie here at WIAPI headquarters for helping us organize today's, and Rebecca for E3, for helping us organize today's E3 YLD. And so with that, we'd like to close, but again, really do encourage you all to continue to educate others about what you learned today, but to also engage them through in-person activities, events, inviting, issue-based experts, community organizations, counselors, etc., to have conversations with students and other young leaders in your campuses and communities, and finally to empower others. So hopefully our efforts will be long-term and sustainable. So with that, I would like to thank you all again. You can visit this video online at youtube.com/WhiteHouseAPI. Once again, that's youtube.com/WhiteHouseAPI, and we continue to encourage you to ask us questions and continue the dialogue moving forward. So thank you all again, and we'll see you next time for our future YLDs.
Bye.
Bye everyone. Thank you.